All right, let's talk about an interesting tool called merging queries. And you'll find the merge queries option in your combine pane of your query editing ribbon. And it's right next to append and combine. And when you click merge, you're going to see this dialog box, which basically says, hey, select two tables, gives you a nice little preview. Tell me what the common field is between them, select a join type, and press OK. So here, all we're doing is we're merging two queries or tables together based on some common column. If you're an Excel user, this is just like using a VLOOKUP. In this case here, looking at the screenshot, it's like we're saying, okay, in the transactions table, let's write a VLOOKUP and let's find the product ID somewhere else. Let's look in the product lookup tab for that product ID, and let's retrieve values from related columns and pull them into my transactions table. That's all we're doing here. We're merging the transactions 97 table with the product table with that shared product ID column. So quick tip just to remember what merging is all about. Merging adds columns to an existing table. It does not add rows. It doesn't make a table taller. It makes a table wider. So just like a VLOOKUP, you're creating new columns and you're retrieving values from a related table and tacking on those columns to an existing table. So important note here, very important note. Just because you can merge tables doesn't mean that you should. And in general, at least in the context of this course, it's often better to keep these tables separate and then just define relationships between them. Again, more on that later. That's going to be covered in depth in the Data Modeling 101 section coming up next, but just keep that in the back of your mind. A lot of Excel users, admittedly myself included, have this habit of always trying to merge and join tables together into these master tables. We need to get out of that mindset because it's inefficient. I'm going to show you exactly why that's the case. But in cases where you do need to merge queries or tables and where it's appropriate to do so, this tool is a great way to do that. So let's hop back into our Excel file and I will show you a quick demo of how this works. So instead of grabbing a new file, I'm actually going to show my queries, hop over to the queries pane, and I'm going to edit the transactions file. Now we'll launch my query editor as expected. And here in the home menu, this is where you'll see these combine options: merge, append, and combine. We're going to cover append next, but for now we're dealing with merging. So you've got two options right off the bat. You can either merge this with a query and overwrite the current form of the transaction table with the new additional columns, or you can merge the queries as a new query or a new table containing those new columns. So then you'd end up with your original product lookup, if that's what we're merging against, your original transaction table, and a merged version containing columns from both. So just for the sake of demonstration, let's merge these as a new table. And just like I said, this is our little dialog box here. It says, all right, we're going to start with our transaction 97 table. And what do we want to actually merge this to? In other words, which table contains the columns that we want to pull into the transactions table? And we've got product ID, we've got a customer ID, we've got a store ID, we've got a date which could match the calendar table. So all of these are valid. Let's look at product lookup, for instance. Means that we can match on product ID with the product ID. If instead we wanted the customer lookup, we would match customer ID to the customer ID. You can see it's estimating how many matches we're getting, and it looks like these are both great matches. So this just depends on, again, which table contains the columns you want. So let's look at product again and say, all right, I want to merge these two tables based on product ID. Got all different join types. Again, we're not going to cover all of these in depth, but it kind of gives you a sense of what each of these mean. So for instance, if we only cared about rows that match between the two tables, IDs that show up in both the transaction table and the product lookup table, we could choose something like inner. In this case, most of these are going to work pretty well because we've got a lookup table with a full comprehensive list of all of our product IDs. And then just about all of those product IDs have been sold in the transaction file. But sometimes you have a trickier merge to deal with where only a certain type of join will do the trick. So let's say we only care about the matching rows here. And if we press OK, what it does is it creates a brand new query or table, which you can kind of preview here in this collapsed window, just called merge one by default. So we want to give that a new name right off the bat. If we're going to keep this called, let's say, transactions merged, we're actually not going to save this file, so I don't have to worry too much about what I name this table. And what you'll see is that it created a new column that says new column with this little button here. It's like an expand button. It tells you that the content for this column is actually coming from another table. So to actually retrieve those values and add them to this new transactions merged table, we need to click that button in the column header. And now we can say, all right, we want to expand the table. Do we want all of the columns from the product table, or do we just want some of them? Let's say we only care about bringing in the product ID, brand, and name, and maybe the retail price too. What this box does, use original column name as prefix. It's kind of annoying. It just gives the headers really long names to tell you where they're coming from. I'm going to uncheck that and then press OK. And when I do that, you see it just blew out those columns, and it's got product ID, product brand, product name, and product retail price. And the reason we're able to populate this data correctly is that you can see right here that the product IDs have matched to the product IDs in the original transaction column, and that served as our key to give us information about the brand, product name, and retail price. So in this case, we could remove the duplicate copy of the product ID, and then there you go. Now we've got this merged table that contains columns from the transactions table and the product lookup. So again, it's a cool tool. You might be tempted to use this all the time, but trust me, hold out until you go through the Data Modeling 101 section, because there's a much cooler, easier, and more efficient way to do this with table relationships in the data model diagram view. Little sneak peek there. It's really cool and really powerful. So this is a quick demo just in case you do need to use that merge functionality. It's pretty easy to do so. In this case, we don't want to keep that new table, so I'm going to go ahead and discard the changes. And there you have it, merging queries.